Chapter 14 Heat. Michael thought by now he was used to being alone, that if they gave out awards for knowing how to be alone, he would win all of them. He was more alone than ever now, without a baseball game to look forward to, not knowing if he would get to play again this year. Because if there was a secret he had that felt almost as big as the one Poppy, it was this. Baseball was Michael's real best friend, even more than Manny. Baseball was a constant companion for him, no matter how many times he came into the quiet of the empty apartment, especially at night. There was the game he had just played, or the game he was getting ready to play, or the Yankee game on the radio or on the TV. There was no mother to make him a snack when he came through the door in the afternoon. There was no father now to sit with him at the dinner table, the way he used to sit with Poppy when he got home early enough, and talk about his day, or just talk about any silly old thing that came to his head. Most nights when he got back from a game, Carlos had left him food to heat up in the microwave Poppy had bought for them a few weeks before he died. Michael thought he knew everything about being alone, but somehow this was different. He wasn't sad all the time, going through life with some kind of sad face on him. Poppy always used to tell him, and Carlos, that anybody could get knocked down. It was how you pick yourself up that was important. How you got on with things. He'd gotten on with things when he was the new boy in school, the one off the boat. He was proud of the way he had gotten on with other things after they had lost Poppy, and he knew there was plenty of things in his life to make him happy. Carlos could do it, when he would give Michael another pep talk about how it was the two of them against the world. Manny made him happy. Ellie made him happy, even though she seemed to be running away from him half the time. Michael knew that if he ever tried to fumble around finding the right words, as good as he had gotten with his English in the last year, and tried to explain what he was feeling right now to Manny, how alone he really felt, his friend would give him one of his wall-to-wall smiles and say, "But Star, how can you be alone when you've got me?" Even Manny wasn't enough. Not right now. Baseball made Michael feel normal. It made him feel as if he had turned back the clock, that things were the way they used to be before Poppy died, before Carlos became the man of the house, before they both had to live in fear of all those official persons, whether they worked for the Bronx borough president or the administration for children's services. Before. It was why Michael never complained along with the rest of the Clippers when one of their games ran long. A pitcher would start walking the whole world, and the game would go past 2 hours, and everybody would act like they couldn't get off the field soon enough. Michael never cared how long the game took, because when the game ended, he knew the next stop for him was the empty apartment at 825 Gerard. Manny called him Star, and Michael let him, because Michael treated it like a joke. One more joke between the two of them. Part of why they were the kind of friends they were. So Manny got to call him something that Michael would never ever call himself. But with all of that, Michael knew how good he was at baseball. He didn't need Manny to tell him. He hadn't even needed Poppy to tell him. He knew what he could do when he had a ball in his hand. Now that the ball had been taken away from him, it turned out the only team in the league that could beat him was a team of coaches. He talked himself into going to the next Clippers game, the last game of the regular season, the one that could clinch first place for them, telling himself that being around the team would make him feel a little better, a little less alone, just for one night. It made him feel worse. The game was at Castle Hill against the Castle Hill Hilltoppers. Michael had originally been scheduled to pitch 4 innings, maybe more, if his pitch count was as low as it usually was. Not only was first place on the line and the top seed in the District 22 playoffs, but there was more than a week before the playoffs started, so Michael would have had plenty of time off. They had gone back and forth all day about going to the game. Finally, about 5 o'clock, Manny had talked them into it. "You get to spend the night with me, or being a mope," Manny said. "I think your choice is clear." So Michael had put on his uniform and taken the ride of the old blue bus over to Castle Hill, sitting in the same back seat he always did, next to Manny. "I'm going to show everybody I'm a team guy," even when I'm not on the team," he said to Manny. "Right," Manny said. "It's been keeping me up nights, worrying whether you were a team guy or not. You know what I'm saying." "Actually, I do." Michael brought two gloves with him, his regular one and the left-handed catcher's mitt Poppy had found for him in a sporting goods store up near Fordham Road, just in case Manny ever missed a game. When the starting players were out in the field for infield practice, Michael warmed up Anthony Fierro, who was starring, starting in his place. He told Mr. M he would coach first base once the game started, and did, taking the job seriously, watching for all of Mr. M's complicated signs, making sure the base runner was paying attention in case Mr. M was calling for a steal. When he was on the bench, he was full of chatter, encouraging whoever was at the plate, trying to be the best baseball cheerleader in the Bronx of the night. Michael tried to smile through it all, even though he felt like he was on the outside of everything. Despite how close he was to the action, the way he always felt like he was on the outside of the Yankee Stadium, even with it standing right there in front of him, bigger than life. The Clippers won 5-4. Anthony pitched the best he had all year. Even cleared the fence with the 3-run homer. He went 4 innings and count with all his slow stuff. This was the dinky pitch he had always seemed to find the outside corner, pitched the last two. But the play of the game came from Maria, a game saver, with 2 outs in the bottom of the last inning, runners on second and third. There was a slow roller to her on second. A ball past the pitcher's mound that Kel had just barely missed. Maria had stopped for a moment, thinking Kel was going to get it. Then she came hard. Too late, Michael thought from where he was standing in the front of the Clippers bench. The Hilltoppers were going to tie the game at least, and having the winning run on third. But Maria Kueller wasn't thinking that way. She was about to make the play of her life. They're handing the ball the way the big leaguer's third baseman does with a bunt, dipping her body to the right, understanding it in almost the same motion to Anthony, who was finishing the game at first base. It all seemed to happen at once, Maria falling into the infield grass, Anthony stretching for the throw, the umpire hustling up the line from the home plate to throw up his arm and call "out" as Maria's throw got the Hilltoppers' batter by a step. Even without Michael on the mound, the Clippers had still managed to hold on to first place. Now, for the first time all night, he felt like he was part of the things. Felt happy for his teammates, beating everybody on the bench out of the crowd of Clippers jumping up and down from first base. After Michael had congratulated Kel for closing the deal, he saw Manny standing on the mound, cap backwards on his head, mask in one hand and mitt in the other. "That was the greatest ending of the whole year," he shouted at Michael. Michael came over to him, grinning, "Only because it gave you a chance to hug Maria." "Shut up," Manny said. Then the two of them gave each other 5, first up high, then down low. As they walked off the field, Manny said, "You're sure you're all right?" "We won," Michael said. "I don't know what it would have been like if we lost, but we didn't lose. I told you all year this team would be good enough to make it to Williamsport without me." Manny put an arm around Michael's shoulder. "Star, what? Let's not get carried away." "I'm cool," Michael said. "Just less cool. A lot less." When he looked up and saw the Grand Concourse coach, the man with the ACS, standing behind their bench, motioning to Michael that he wanted to talk to him. "Remember me?" he asked, sticking out a hand that Michael thought was surprisingly small for a man. "My name's Tony Gibbs." Michael shook it. "I know who you are," he said, "from the other night." "I'm happy things worked out all right for you guys," Mr. Gibbs said, "but I'm sorry you couldn't play." "Me too," Michael said. "Rules are rules," Mr. Gibbs said, "even when they're dumb rules that grown-ups came up with." "Yeah." "I left a message at your apartment," Mr. Gibbs said. "Then I tried the work number your father left on file at the car service." Michael couldn't catch his breath. Felt like he did one time when he wasn't looking, and a hard throw from Anthony had hit him in the stomach. "They said he hadn't been there in a few months," Mr. Gibbs said. Michael thought to himself, "Is that all it's been?" But he knew Mr. Gibbs was right. Poppy had died in May. Now it was August. It just seemed so much further away sometimes. Something that happened in his life he and Carlos and Poppy used to have. Now Michael wanted Carlos here with him, right here, right now, telling him the right thing to say, the right lies to tell. My uncle, he started to say. Yeah, I know, he's sick in Florida. That's why your dad has been away. But he'll be back soon, Michael said. My father, really, really. Where the heck did that come from? How are you guys getting by? Him being away this long, Mr. Gibbs said. My brother has two jobs, Michael said. Too loud, too fast. Good for him, Mr. Gibbs said, smiling at Michael, as if neither of them had a thing to worry about. He was just asking a few questions here, like a teacher going over a simple homework assignment, like they were on the same page, even though Michael knew they weren't even in the same book. Has he come back and forth at all? Who? Your dad, from Florida. One time, Michael said. He drove all the way back a few weeks ago when he thought my uncle was starting to get better. A good lie, Michael decided. Good boy. Not too big a lie. That was the key. Carlos had been saying all along that the simple the lie, the easier it was to remember. Mr. Gibbs wore a gray Special Olympics sweatshirt and a blue jeans and old running shoes and a black baseball cap that said Arthur Ashe Foundation over the bill. Behind him, Michael could see his teammates packing up their gear, the ones who needed a ride, getting ready to board the bus for the drive back across the Bronx to Macomb Dam Park, when they get picked up by the parents who hadn't made the game. Mr. Gibbs sat down on the bench and patted the spot next to him, as if he and Michael had all night. When he took off his cap, Michael saw a lot of curly black hair. He was young for an official person, Michael thought. He'd always thought of them as being older than churches. Well, you probably know why I'm here, kiddo. We gotta come up with that birth certificate, and fast. My brother's been trying to call some of my father's old friends in Havana, Michael said. And my father, of course, he's been doing the same for my uncles. Understand, we told the coaches who made the complaint that we're comfortable with what we already have, but they've called the folks in the district office, and the district office says that because you're such a great pitcher, and because your team has such a great chance to make it to the World Series, they don't want there to be any controversy, the way there was a few years ago, when Danny Almonte lied about his age, Michael said. You know about him? Everybody in the Bronx does. Michael imagined a tennis ball bouncing back and forth across a net. I want to help, Mr. Gibbs said. Michael wanted to say, sure you do. Thank you, is what he did say. Tell you what, Mr. Gibbs said, if your dad's not back next week, why don't I stop by the apartment and see if I can help you and your brother out? This is a pretty complicated job for a 17-year-old kid. Okay, Michael said. I know this probably doesn't make any sense to you, Mr. Gibbs said. Sometimes it's all the grown-ups who act like children. Michael heard Mr. Minya yelling at everybody that he could still see a lot of garbage, to get back there and police the area one last time. For what it's worth, Michael, Mr. Gibbs said, I'm on your side. I work with a lot of kids around your age, and I think I know a 14-year-old when I see one, or at least, like, I think I do. I'm 12, Michael said. Then he couldn't help it. This wasn't one of the times he could stop himself. He started to cry. Hey, Mr. Gibbs said, putting an arm around him, everything's going to be fine. Michael nodded, as if agreeing with him, rubbing his eyes as he did, feeling like the dope of all times, the dope of the whole stupid world, hoping that somebody on his team could see him acting like a baby. I know, Michael said. You know what they say, right? Mr. Gibbs said, still wanting to be his friend. Somehow Michael knew what was coming next. No crying in baseball, Mr. Gibbs said. Not even Little League baseball. Then he tried to pump Michael for information on the ride home. Michael told him they could talk about it on the phone later. He didn't want anybody else on the bus to hear. You're asking me to be patient, Manny said. You know I don't do patient. Just this once. Okay, Manny said. But let's not make a habit of it. Mr. M did what he's been doing the whole All-Star season when the Clippers had an away game, dropping Michael in front of 825 Gerard and not pulling away with the old bus until Michael was inside the front door. Everybody on the team knew that Carlos worked most nights and had heard the story about the sick uncle in Florida and thought Victor Arrow was still away. So nobody thought this was star treatment for Michael. Even if they did, Manny always pointed out nobody would have given a rat's rear end. His words. Michael told Manny to call when he got home, promising he'd tell him everything about his conversation with Mr. Gibbs. Then he got out of the bus, ran up the front steps, took the stairs up to the apartment, unlocked the door, made himself humongous chocolate milkshake. Remember with a slap to his forehead that the Yankees were on Channel 9 tonight, regular TV. He could watch. They were playing the Texas Rangers at home. The announcers were saying that tonight had been family night at the stadium, and that there had been a one-inning game before the start of the regular one that involved some of the Yankees and their children. That was why the Yankee Rangers game had been a little late in starting. Keith Wright, the Yankee rookie left-hander, was pitching tonight and had a 2-0 lead in the third inning. Michael sat on the couch, happy as always to have the Yankees as company in the empty apartment. On the screen, Keith Wright threw a big, slow, breaking curveball that seemed to come up to the plate as slowly as the one that El Grande liked to throw, when the batter missed it by a mile. The camera went into the Yankee dugout and found El Grande sitting there with a couple of teammates, pointing at Keith Wright and laughing his head off. Then the camera went to a box near the Yankee dugout, where Michael Kay, the Yankees play-by-play man, said El Grande's family was sitting tonight, saying that it was unusual for the children to be here. They usually only came when the father was on the one throwing the big, slow, breaking curveballs. The little girl's face filled the screen. Michael Kay said that was El Grande's 3-year-old daughter Adriana. While the camera was on her, she turned and tried to comb over her seat into the box behind her mother grabbing her from behind right before she went up and over. The older daughter, Michael Kay continued, is named Elisa. That's right, Michael. Jim Cat, the Yankees' older broadcaster, said Elisa Garcia Gonzalez. A name as pretty as she is. Michael stared at the screen. She's beautiful, Michael Kay said. No, Michael Arrow said. She's Ellie.